Should be started. Um, Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time you're watching this. Um, Thank you for joining us in this session today for the EXCELerate kind of workshop program. My name's Alex. I'm a fourth-year student at the University of Waterloo.
And my name is Tabion. I'm a fourth year student at Carleton University.
Yeah, so today we're actually just going to be doing a quick run through of Excel. This session is really meant for people who've never really used the application before and for them to kind of just be exposed to really what you can be doing um, inside of it. So we'll kind of start off, and what we're going to be kind of discussing is first off how to manage the files in Excel, and also some, you know, kind of metadata things you can adjust for Excel. Um, then we're also going to go quick highlight of some important shortcuts that you should know. And then we're going to be going through all of the ribbons, and we'll explain a little bit more of what a ribbon is um, later. So first off, file management. So in Excel, you're not going to be using one kind of file, you're using multiple files, and sometimes you're also going to link them together. So it's important to kind of keep in mind how you want to manage these files. So first off, there are different Excel versions. Right now, the kind of, if you download it from the store, you'll get the latest version, and that'll be supported by VBA, and we'll discuss what VBA is a little later. Um, and then there's also some customizations that you can do, and we'll also discuss some naming conventions. So kind of just to go really quickly, I wanted to show you um, an Excel file first. So if I just pull up my Excel really quickly. So this is what like a typical workbook would look like. And I kind of just did this by pulling it up. But if you want to search for it, you can search for the app, and then you'd also, if you don't have the app downloaded, you can download it from the Apple Store or the Windows Store. So first off, kind of just going into some file management, naming conventions. If we open up File Explorer, okay, this is kind of how you want to access a lot of your files. So for example, create just like a mock folder, and you know, when it comes to naming conventions, odds are you'll be doing a lot of regular reporting stuff. So when it comes to naming it, just make sure that you're keeping, whatever data we receive nice and organized, and also, when you're playing with that raw data, and keeping that edited data and raw data separate, and you'll find that it's tremendously helpful in keeping things organized as you kind of do these regular reporting tasks. So that's a little bit on naming conventions. Each team that you work on will have their own naming conventions, so not too much more to speak up on that. Another thing I wanted to go through is customization on your actual Excel tool. So if you want to open up File, and hopefully you're following along with this, open up File, you click Options, okay? There's a ton of things you can play around with, okay? So I actually recommend going through all of these and kind of seeing how you want things to be viewed. But most importantly, you can customize your ribbon. So um, when we look at what a ribbon is just one of these, tabs. Okay, they're basically tabs in the top left here, and they access a bunch of different tools. So when we want to customize these ribbons, we can determine which tabs we actually want. So one of the things I recommend is having all of them, just all the tabs on. So if we see that, if I take out automate, for example, automate's gone. So if I go back, customize ribbon, click automate again, and I can bring that tab back in. Another thing is quick access toolbar. So quick access toolbar is in the very top left, and this is helpful for once you are using a function or tool repeatedly. Let's say I wanted to um, decrease font size. Okay, I can add this function to the top left and actually have it in my keyboard shortcuts. So kind of like a neat trick, but basically, since after I customize this, sorry, one second, pop up, toolbar, sorry, I didn't add that in. We'll just do fill color for now. So we import that over. add that over, sorry, add, and then we finalize that. So now we see it's in the top left. So what's useful about that is, say we wanted to use a shortcut, and Alt keyboard, the button on your keyboard, Alt, allows you to open up all of these shortcuts. And you can see now that since I've added that, I can now quickly add this function. So it's white right now. So if I click Alt and 5, then I can pull up the fill color pretty quickly, as opposed to going through another shortcut. So a little bit about shortcuts. I think the goal with Excel is to minimize the amount of use you have with your mouse. I think that it's a lot faster if you really stick to keeping your fingers on the keyboard. I think that's a very important thing for sure. So yeah, so we talked a little bit about file management. Okay. So before I kind of finish up the file management section, I really wanted to quickly go over, autosave. Okay, autosave. So an Excel file can be saved in two main locations. Okay, it can be saved to the cloud on the OneDrive, right? Or it can be saved through a Windows network, which is your actual computer, or your work's LAN, okay, local access network. So if you save your computer on a local network, okay, like this PC, for example, save it in a documents folder. If that folder is not connected to OneDrive, you are not able to use autosave, okay? If it is uploaded to the OneDrive, okay, so say I wanted to connect this, so we can actually look at the information here. Okay, so we see how to choose location. Oh, okay, I can put it in my OneDrive, I can put it in my local PC. Okay, those are two main options. So if I save it here, okay, I'm able to turn on autosave. You see how it automatically turned that on? If you upload it to OneDrive, it'll automatically turn on autosave. I think this is just a really important feature, especially since autosave can save you a lot of hours, especially if you forget to press the save button or your computer crashes. Uploading your files to OneDrive tends to be more safer. I will say though, if you're using a complicated Excel file with complicated macros and some VBA code, it actually might be faster to run it on a local network so that you're not having to upload it back and forth and have the results kind of be uploaded kind of through a third-party network. So that's kind of like a few kibits that I want to mention. Now I just want to kind of go a little more deeper into shortcuts. So kind of two main worlds of shortcuts, okay? On the right, we have the function shortcuts, okay? So every button that starts with an F opens up a new different kind of function, and we have here a list of functions and their actions, and also their importance in the right column. We also have the main shortcuts. These are the ones that I feel like are must knows, and can really speed your life, make your life so much easier. So this is just on the Microsoft website. It's a good link, and they have all the main actions and their shortcuts. You'll see this button right here, Alt, opens up a world of possibilities. So if I go back to my Excel sheet, okay, just a blank one, right? I was kind of showing this a little bit earlier, but if we press Alt, we can actually access all of the ribbons and their inner tools using a shortcut. So say if I wanted to, press fill color again, I can actually just press. So this is Alt, H, H, and then I'm back at the fill color. Okay, there's a ton of possibilities you could do. So we can also go to the Insert tab by pressing N. Now we're in the Insert tab. Okay, from here, say if I wanted to insert a text box, for example, then I can do that just from my just from the keyboard. So again, that list of shortcuts is super helpful, and highly recommend to just practice because you can memorize, but your muscle memory is really where it'll become convenient to use. So a little bit about shortcuts. Definitely super useful and very, very recommended to kind of use. So now kind of gave a little bit of a little intro. Sorry, one second. I wanted to go into ribbon. So I kind of mentioned before, ribbon is just a tab in Excel, and they open up a specific kind of tool. So Going back to our Excel spreadsheet, this is the home ribbon, okay? Um, and this is the insert ribbon, draw ribbon, page layout, and so on and so forth, okay? So inside the actual home ribbon, okay, this ribbon is meant for formatting your sheet and searching for values in your sheet, okay? That's really what I want to characterize this kind of ribbon. So for example, we can format tables, we can format cell values, we can sort and filter a table, we can find and select find and select data. Okay, so this is my rough Excel sheet, but I want to move on to another Excel spreadsheet. So this is just example data that we pulled. It's project management data, okay, and their headers are project name, task name, who is it assigned to, start date, yada yada yada. Okay, so we have this data. Okay, so say if I wanted to format this column, okay, one of the key important shortcuts is control arrows. Okay, so I can fly around this keyboard. But if I shift, I can highlight, and from here, using my keyboard shortcuts, I can do press Alt, go back to the H. Okay, say I wanted to fill this up with color, and now I can fill out with green. So it's kind of an example of how we can use that. Kind of going through the ribbon from left to right. We can see we can adjust the font, we can adjust how the word is kind of looking like. Control Z to undo that. We can also indent different ways, right? Highly recommend just kind of just going around and playing around, seeing what you can do with it. This video is kind of really highlighting some of the broad strokes that you can do. So one important thing that I would say is, after we format our sheet, format our tables, we're going to want to access some of the data. So if we look on the right side here, we can actually see sort and filter, which is a super helpful tool. So say I wanted to order this entire table from the value of lowest progress to highest progress. Okay, so I would want to kind of select this table, this column. I mean, click the sort and filter, right, and I can sort from smallest to largest. Okay, so let's do that. So I want to expand it because it's the entire table. Now we can see that the progress is ordered from 0 to 100. So kind of just a use case, and it's super helpful. There's also find and select, which is kind of your control F in the entire sheet. So say if I wanted to find where Sam was, we can see Sam right here. We can find the next iteration of Sam, or occurrence of Sam, I mean. Right? So there's 2 occurrences. Awesome. So it's a little bit about the home ribbon. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The insert ribbon. Okay, insert ribbon, as name kind of suggests, we're kind of creating any graphics. Okay, this can be a pivot table, a very really helpful, useful tool that'll be covered in the next section. But we can also create illustrations, charts, and comments. So going back to our example spreadsheet, we can access insert by, again, Alt N, and say we wanted to create a new table. Okay, so Alt N T, and this is where the data is. You can see, yeah. But since there's no data, there's really no point to that. Okay, so going back to the insert tab, we can add shapes, pictures, icons. Not this area isn't too useful, but if you're wanting to create maybe a 3D graphic where, let's say, you're creating some documentation for a specific workflow on a team, you could actually use this to make some graphics to explain the workflow easier, for example. You could also do checkboxes, helps with to-do lists, maybe if you're sharing this Excel sheet. There's recommended charts. So if you select the data that you wanted to turn into a chart, we can use pie, for example, or maybe a bar chart would be better. Right? We can see all of the occurrences of the percentages. Okay, so we have, let's say, this many amount of hundreds and stuff like that. So it's really interesting, like really nice to just make from a given data set, you can create a wide variety of automatic charts and graphs, which is really helpful, like Spark clients and stuff like that. There's also some text boxes that you can add and so on and so forth. Okay, So that's a little bit about the insert tab. We'll go back to our slideshow. Okay, so moving on, we have the draw ribbon. This one's kind of, for drawing. It's nice if you're sharing your screen and you have another person you want to explain the sheet to them. So some cool functions in the draw tab, right, is say I use this marker. It's called the action pen. I can actually write a word and enter it into the cell. Let it load for a little bit. So I'm not entirely sure how useful that is, but it's a cool feature. Another thing I could do is say I wanted to draw a circle. Okay, like, okay, cool. A nice little circle. If I press ink to shape, okay, so if I don't want to use my mouse, I use Alt J I H. Okay, and now I select this first, actually. And now I actually want to press ink to shape. It'll turn into a circle, an actual shape. Again, not entirely sure how useful it is, but maybe if you're wanting to turn some formal notes, rough notes into something formal, then world's your oyster. Okay, that's the draw ribbon. Moving on to page layout. Okay, I would say this is one of the most important ribbons, just because this one is you're setting up your file to print. Okay, so we're turning this electronic spreadsheet into either a PDF or maybe a paper print version. So one of the things you can play around with is, the paper size of what we're going to try to do, the margins within it, where we want each sheet to be broken up and put onto a page and scale to fit, and some print titles. So quickly going over the page layout, we're going back to our example here. Okay, so sorry, just delete this real quick. Say, for example, I wanted to print this table. Okay, so zooming out here a little bit. The page layout. Okay, how do I know where exactly this page is going to print? So if I click breaks, okay, insert page break, we can start seeing, sorry, page breaks, reset all page breaks, insert page break. Okay, we can start seeing, you see this dotted line here? This shows where the value is going to be printed, okay? Where everything from here to the next line where this is going to be printed, okay? You see these dotted dashed lines. So, for example, how am I going to know what this table is going to look like when I want to print it? Okay, so let's quickly access the print view. If we want to do that, we can use a keyboard shortcut, which is Alt F P. Okay, so we can see that dotted line cut the data in a kind of awkward position, right? We can see that the table doesn't really quite fit well on the piece of paper that we're sourcing. Okay, so going back to our kind of table here, how can we play around with this? Okay, so one, we can change around what size we want of the paper. Okay, if we want this to be standard size A4, then we want it to keep it. Okay, so then what else can we do? We can play around with the margins. Okay, so this is a custom one, but we can change it to normal. You can see that it changed the dotted line where that was, right? See, it's kind of moving the dotted line. And there's also narrow. Okay, this makes the margins as wide as possible. And there's also wide, which makes the margins wide as possible. Okay, so say we want this to be narrow. Okay, so our margins are kind of there. Okay, what else can we do to try to make this fit? We can scale it. Okay, so if we scale, we can hopefully see how this dotted line is moving from left to right, meaning that we're fitting more cells onto the page. So if we keep scaling down and down, we can see that dotted line moving. Okay, so now we should be fitting the entire table. Okay, so if we check this now, we go Alt FP. Okay, it's a little zoomed in, but we can see that it actually fits all the columns now, which is a great start. If we wanted to clean this up a bit, we would want to reset the. So yeah, some of the rows are kind of missing on, but if we want to kind of make sure the rows are included, kind of reset the page breaks. Okay, so all the lines are gone. Let's do that again. and highlight this entire table. I think you guys kind of get the point how you can play around with the printing area. Um, and especially since, some cells can't fit on all pages, you might want to play around to make sure that, your data is being properly printed, stuff like that. So if we go scale it back again, um, just keep scaling it, and we should be good now to have everything printed on one piece of paper. Oh, okay, I cut everything off. This is actually repeated edited tables. So, I mean, we can see the tables on one sheet now, which is the goal. Um, and there's also some different print titles. That's what the issue was here. Kind of a more complicated tool, but I think that gives a good idea of what the page layout tab kind of is meant for. Okay, so that is the first four tabs. Pass it on to Tavian to kind of finish us through the rest of the ribbons.
Next is the formulas ribbon. And of course, it helps with creating, assessing, and understanding your formulas. In the formula ribbon, you'll find pre-made and custom formulas. As you can see, they're here. It'll have it, it'll tell you generally speaking what you want. As we can see, using insert function, we can find the function we want to use. Um, like let's suppose a simple thing, right? We wanted to find the average amount of days required for a for our projects to be finished. So of course, we could insert function and use average. And it'd be, of course, F7 to F52. And we can see that on average it's 26.5 days rounding. Now let's suppose we also wanted and we can see it up here. That's the formula that's being conducted. Let's suppose we wanted to do something a little bit more advanced, right? We want to find the average progress, assuming progress on the project has actually been made. So of course we would go down here, and we could use average if, but I personally prefer to use average colon if colon 7 2 which and then this is a logical argument for not being 0, and this is just a range. And of course, close our brackets. And we can see that our average percent for those that have actually started progress, that's 71% roughly. And we can understand what's going on because we can look up here and we can see we're averaging all the things if they're not equal to 0. And we can see going on like Python, it just allows you to input code from Python. Define name, it allows you to define variables essentially. And trace, it allows you to ascribe certain variables to define name allows you to prescribe certain variables to certain cells. Um, and trace precedence and dependence. Trace precedence allow you to know what cells will affect other cells. So as we can see, if we click on this and we see trace precedence, so it's this one, you see trace precedence, we can see that everything in this table affects that 71%, which makes sense because even if the 0% changes, now it's counted in the if. And we can see from the trace dependence, let me move the formula, move the arrows. And we can see for the trace dependence, um, this 100% affects the 71%. All right. Now on to the data ribbon. Data ribbon is for obtaining, formatting, manipulating data with, of course, there's get data, there's connections and queries, and there's filter and sort. Um, we can see that I'll start off with filter and sort first. We can see that this table already has filters enabled. Um, so we're able to, of course, sort from A to Z. Let's suppose we wanted to see which required the least amount of days in um, descending order, no, ascending order. We can sort by smallest to largest, and we can see the quality assurance by Fiona takes only 10 days, and that's the smallest one there. Of course, we can filter out. If we wanted to take only a look at our financial sector and see which project requires the least amount of days there, we can just deselect everything, tick financial, and now we can see that the quickest financial project would be financial reporting by Mark, and it only takes 21 days. Get data, of course, it allows us to attain data and put it into a table. So we can see, I'm just going to repurpose the file that we're already using, but I'm going to make some edits to it. Um, so of course we can do get data, import it, and usually when it's imported as is, it's not very valuable. This doesn't really have a, this isn't pretty per se. It's not in the format that we'd want it to. So of course we do transform data. And we're just going to remove a couple of these rows, essentially the ones that are just for fluff. So the first three, and even as is, still want to make some more edits. So I'm gonna go into transform, use first row as headers, and now we have our table set up. Now let's suppose we wanted to make a few more edits to it, and we only want to take a look at the. Suppose we only want to take a look at the ones that are marketing and financial. Well, we deselect everything, click marketing and financial, and we can load them in. And of course, we can sort them from the amount of days required, or we could start sort it from start date. Yeah, let's sort it from start date. So we're just gonna choose ascending dates, like the ones that started earliest. And that will be our new table. And of course, once everything's done and we like how it looks, we can just close and load. And now we have a new table and it's loaded in properly. Usually you go into connections, but there's no connections because connections is for when it's from an entirely different Excel Excel spreadsheet. This is from the same sheet. So we can see in the queries, it tells you where it comes from, and it comes from management data, as we can see. All right. Now on to review. The review ribbon is just for protecting, fine-tuning, and creating comments. Um, Usually you're going to want to use it for spell checking just to make everything professional. If you're working in a very large um, Excel spreadsheet with a lot of data, you're going to want to use check performance. This just allows you to optimize the file, make things a little bit better, make it run a little bit smoother. Um, and new comment is it's pretty useful. It just allows you to start conversations. You can ask questions, communicate with your team. Um, yeah, anything you need to ask, you can write it there. Also, some concerns. And of course, Protect Sheet and Protect Workbook, they just allow you to add passwords onto your onto your project so that like any corporate espionage is you won't get sabotaged essentially by like spyware or malware. All right, now on to View. Of course, View lets you view things. Um, it allows for it's not especially useful. You're going to be using page layout more often than not. I mean, turning off and on the grid lines is cool in a sense. So that's something. The main use of Vue that I found is freeze panes. So for some weird reason, with freeze panes, you have to select not just at the like one below what you want to actually select for some reason. And you can use freeze panes, and this allows you to scroll through. The main value of this is that it allows you to freeze your headers in place and scroll through. And you will use page layout 90% of the time. The automate ribbon. Automate allows you to create and use scripts. So as you can see, there's record script, record actions, new scripts. You can access all your scripts from all scripts, of course. It's not as special, and there's also some preloaded scripts as well. It's not the most valuable thing at this level. It will be a lot. It will be covered a lot more, and it is used a lot when you get more into the advanced sections of the course. And developer likewise, is for macros and changing how Excel works. The add-ins allow you to change Excel. The controls just lets you glean a little bit more into the actual source code. And the macros are other macros. They're just cheap and easy ways to perform functions. Yeah. Not something we're going to be covering on in the beginner section. Once again, this is still fairly advanced. And of course, there's the help ribbon. It's used mainly for contacting support. You can solve a couple problems with it as well. But generally speaking, if you're contacting support, you might email them anyways. An Acrobat, of course, allows you to create PDFs. Once you click on the Acrobat, you'll see an option to create PDF. You click it, press yes, and you can choose where to save it and whatnot. And that's essentially it. And that is all for the ribbons. Hope this was educational. Alex, do you have anything you'd like to add on?
Yeah, for sure. So this was the beginner section session. We have the intermediate and advanced sessions coming up later in the coming weeks. Again, this one was just for people who've never really seen Excel. So if you made it with us this far, congrats, thank you. So if you're a little bit more interested on the beginner kind of topics, the SOA through the affiliate membership program actually has some more kind of basic material on Excel that you can take a gander through. But we'll also be posting a practice sheet to help solidify some of the concepts that we've discussed here today. So yeah, we hope that this was kind of helpful to kind of get your you know toes in the water, your feet a little wet with Excel. It is a super useful application that you're going to see in probably all of your occupations and jobs, and it's really great spreadsheet tool as long as you know how to use it. So again, thanks for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks.
Yeah. Hope you have a good rest of your day.